There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
I'm retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. The topic of today's episode is death through suffocation in a suitcase, the Sarah Boone case. This is the story of Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres Jr. Their relationship was anything but smooth, filled with accusations and fights that had local authorities on speed dial. But what started as a whirlwind romance turned into something else during a night of heavy drinking, leading to an incident that would leave one of them dead and the other facing serious charges. Was it just a game gone wrong, or something much darker? You won't want to miss this one. Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres Jr. were in a turbulent relationship filled with accusations, frequent fights, and even police interventions. Both Boone and Torres had run-ins with the law over domestic violence, and it was no secret to those around them that things could get pretty intense between the two. Their relationship followed a familiar pattern in cases of domestic violence. A cycle would build, erupt in a confrontation, settle for a bit, and then repeat. Unfortunately, those warning signs and the couple's volatile dynamic foreshadowed the tragic turn their story would eventually take. Local authorities knew about Boone and Torres' ongoing issues, as police were often called to step in when things got out of hand. Each of them accused the other of being abusive. Sometimes Boone claiming Torres was violent, and other times Torres pointing the finger at Boone. Despite the accusations and interventions, they stayed together, wrapped in a cycle that only got worse over time. Alcohol added fuel to the fire, intensifying their already fraught relationship and paving the way for the tragic incident on the 24th of February 2020. Torres dead and Boone facing severe legal consequences. As per claims from Sarah Boone, the night of 24th February was just like any other, as she and Torres were engaged in a game of hide and seek after a night of heavy drinking. In her version, Torres climbed into a suitcase voluntarily as part of the game, an act that would soon take a tragic turn.
And it got physical?
No. Sunday was one of the better days that we have had in quite some time.
Boone told authorities she thought the whole thing was just a harmless prank.
Tell us, Dolores, during your marriage to George, was he ever violent with you or any of your kids?
He was never violent with my children. We would have normal husband and wife family spats here and there, but never to the point where...
She believed Torres could escape from the suitcase on his own and went to bed, only to wake up the next morning to find him unresponsive. However, the investigation revealed a much darker side to the story. Disturbing footage found on Boone's phone painted a chilling picture that contradicted her claims. The video showed Boone not just zipping Torres into the suitcase, but also recording herself laughing as he begged for help, pleading that he couldn't breathe. In one part of the recording, Torres was heard gasping, "I can't breathe," to which Boone allegedly responded with laughter, saying, "That's what you get for choking me."
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
You
Sarah.
stupid.
Sarah.
That's my name. Don't wear it up.
Sarah. I can't breathe, babe. Seriously.
Yeah, that's when you do when you choke me.
Sarah. 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 Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
That's on you.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
It's on you.
Sarah.
Real or ransom. Might want to get video for it extra. Because I got this.
Sarah.
Real or ransom.
Sarah. Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
Oh. That's what I feel like when you ching on me.
Sarah. Breathe, Sarah.
Yeah. You should probably shut up.
Sarah.
Shh.
Sarah.
This exchange raised serious doubts about Boone's portrayal of the incident as a harmless game gone awry and suggested a more sinister motivation behind her acting.
He was a good son. He wasn't perfect, but he was a good son. And every time that he come here, every time, he just stand in that wall and he said, Mom, I love you. He was a father, he was my son, he was an uncle, he was a cousin, and he was a friend. I feel sad for her. I don't feel sorry, I feel sad. And I don't hate her. Really, I don't. I don't have that in my heart. I never hate nobody.
The legal proceedings and timeline of delays. The Sarah Boone case quickly became a tangled web of legal complications and delays that made it hard for anyone to keep track of what was happening. After Boone's initial arrest, she was charged with second-degree murder, a serious offense that could carry hefty penalties. From the get-go, finding stable legal representation turned out to be quite the challenge for her. In fact, she went through 8 different attorneys before her trial even started. This revolving door of lawyers was partly due to Boone's behavior and her disagreements with them, which really complicated her ability to build a consistent defense. Sarah Boone case, Florida woman charged in Suitcase murder, has gone through 7 lawyers, court documents reveal. Boone's defense leaned on the concept of battered spouse syndrome, suggesting she had been subjected to a long-term abuse at the hands of Jorge Torres Jr. According to her legal team, her actions were influenced by the trauma and psychological scars that come from being in such a tumultuous relationship. This was their way of countering the prosecution's claim that her actions were malicious and intentional. Instead of being seen as a calculated crime, they wanted Boone's actions to be viewed as a reaction to years of abuse.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
But with new attorneys, constant requests for delays, and Boone's attempts to represent herself, it was no wonder that the case dragged on. Eventually, the court caught wind of Boone's erratic behavior. A judge even ruled that her frequent attorney changes and self-representation attempts were messing with the judicial process.
Why did you stay? You got to tell the jury.
As anyone who has ever been in love, or when you love someone, or primarily someone or something, you go above and beyond, and you tolerate and you endure and you persevere, and you try to make that person as spectacular as you possibly can, no matter the sacrifice that you may have to go through to serve someone else in a positive light so they can be better people for themselves, and to just make them a happier person. And love is very strong, and love is very deep, and love, I believe, is not fully understood in a lot of ways for how different people react to it. And I very much, deeply, and passionately love George. I love him to this day.
In May 2020, the medical examiner determined Torres's death was a homicide by asphyxiation. What's more, his body showed signs of injuries like bruises and cuts, suggesting potential blunt force trauma. This set the stage for a case filled with twists, turns, and delays that frustrated just about everyone following it. And by January 2023, Boone's trial faced significant delays. One of these was due to her attorney contracting COVID-19, pushing the court dates further. A defense team hinted at a possible battered spouse defense, adding another layer to the already complicated proceedings. This wasn't just another simple trial. Boone was entering a not guilty plea and gearing up for what would be a long battle. The delays continued into July 2023. Boone's defense requested funding for an expert witness to bolster her claim of being a battered spouse. If that wasn't enough, Boone's relationship with her attorneys became a story in itself. In July 2024, she was already on her 8th lawyer, who withdrew, citing irreconcilable differences. Boone decided to represent herself for a while, showing just how tense things were behind the scenes. Things shifted once again. In August 2024, when Boone got her 9th attorney, James Owens, on board, Owens wasted no time, arguing that Boone's right to a speedy trial had been violated. He even filed a motion to dismiss the case, but that got struck down. In September, Owens made a public statement emphasizing Boone's prolonged wait in jail, aiming to show any weaknesses in the prosecution's case.
I can't fucking breathe, babe. Seriously.
Yeah, that's when you do me, shake me.
Sarah.
The trial. The trial of Sarah Boone started with high emotions and intense arguments. It went on for around 7 sessions, but right off the bat, prosecutor William J. made a bold statement by reading out the chilling transcript from the video found on Boone's phone. Jay set the tone quickly, telling the jury they wouldn't hear any tears or sorrow from Boone, implying this wasn't just an accident, it was deliberate. On the flip side, defense attorney James Owens painted a completely different picture. He told the jury that Boone wasn't a monster, but someone who had endured constant physical abuse from Torres. Owens argued that she acted in self-defense, driven by a fear and years of violence, saying her actions were justified given the circumstances. The trial took a deeper dive into the couple's troubled life with testimonies from those who knew them. A neighbor, Vincent Battaglia, shared how Boone once told him to keep quiet about the constant arguing he overheard through their thin apartment walls. It was a clear sign that their fights weren't exactly a secret, and were loud enough to grab attention. Things got even more intense when Boone's ex-husband, Brian Boone, testified. He recalled how she called him after discovering Torres's dead, and she called him after she discovered Torres, and he advised her to dial 911. This moment gave a glimpse into Boone's initial response, which each side of the courtroom spun differently.
Well, apparently, Sarah called me at one point during the night.
You recall about what time she called you?
I think it was 11 something.
When you answered the phone, how did Sarah sound on the phone?
She sounded like she had been drinking, was pretty drunk.
Were you able to understand what the defendant was saying?
Somewhat, but she woke me up. I had work the next day. I was asleep when she called. She's done this before, calling me late at night, and generally I kind of just try to ignore it, so I wasn't really paying attention.
Who was she living with at the time?
George Torres.
The jury then heard the actual 911 call made by Boone, where she told the dispatcher that Torres was purple. This detail didn't go unnoticed, and it made everyone think about what that moment really meant. Was it panic or something more calculated? Next, body cam footage from Deputy Kayla Rodriguez was shown. It captured the scene right after Boone's call, adding a real, unfiltered view of how things played out when authorities arrived. The tension in the room was palpable as everyone watched Boone interact with the police.
Yeah. You want to help clear the back bedrooms real quick? Just make sure there's nobody else in here.
Was he here by himself?
Nope, he was here with the girlfriend, and that's the girlfriend's ex-husband. He was gonna speak it. They were planning how to go speak it, what she said. She's been doing CPR on him all morning before calling us. Yep. So I'm gonna go ahead and start making phone calls.
Okay, go ahead.
What do I do with this dog? Because I don't want him to mess with him. Come here. Oh.
And then there was the suitcase itself, the grim centerpiece of the trial. Crime scene investigator Melissa Roughgarden showed it to the jury, a reminder of the disturbing way Torres was found. It was a hard moment to watch and seemed to hit home for everyone present. With each testimony and piece of evidence, the trial kept shifting between two starkly different stories.
Of zipping up her boyfriend in a suitcase and then leaving him to die there 4 years ago. Fox 35's digital journalist Garrett Weimer is joining us live from the newsroom tonight.
The prosecution pushed the narrative that Boone was cold and unfeeling, while the defense argued that she was a woman trapped in a cycle of abuse, doing what she could to protect herself. This is a part of the letter she wrote to the state. The defendant is trying to avoid any further persecution and penalization from the judge and court, while vigorously attempting to succeed in her forced position of pro se attorney and representation of self. It all left the courtroom hanging in suspense, wondering which version of Boone would ultimately be believed.
I took measurements of the suitcase.
What are the measurements of the suitcase?
It was 28 inches in length, 20 inches wide, and 8 7/8 inches deep.
Crime scene investigator takes the stand, showing the magnum-size wine bottles, a baseball ball bat, and the medium-sized suitcase which Jorge Torres was zipped up in. Jorge was 103 pounds. He was small, but how the heck did he fit into a 29-inch high suitcase? Prosecutors believe Sarah Boone used the baseball bat to strike the suitcase. Defense lawyers called out the CSI as the baseball bat wasn't checked for fibers. As you can tell, the CSI was having trouble opening the case as the zippers were missing the pulley thing. Throughout this testimony, Sarah Boone was seen smiling, shaking her head, and writing notes. Not illegal in any way, but where is the remorse? A tear. A little sullen-faced. Regret, maybe.
Does everybody understand that? I see everybody nodding their heads. Okay. All right, State, are we ready to bring in our jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, are we ready to bring in our jury?
Yes, Judge.
All right, let's go ahead and bring in our jury. Everyone will remain seated.
Sarah Boone has been found guilty of second-degree murder by an Orange County jury after an incident that led to the suffocation death of her boyfriend, Jorge Torres Jr. Sarah Boone verdict. Suitcase killer shows no emotion as she learns her fate. The verdict came after a 10-day trial in which the jury deliberated on the evidence, including chilling video footage from Boone's phone. The video showed Torres trapped in a suitcase, pleading for help and struggling to breathe, while Boone taunted him and made remarks like, "That's what you get." The jury rejected Boone's defense that she acted out of trauma from past abuse and did not intend to kill Torres. Boone testified in her own defense, claiming that alcohol played a role in her actions and that she had no intention of harming Torres. However, the prosecution showed contradictions in her statements and the incriminating nature of the video evidence, which showed Boone laughing and ignoring Torres's desperate cries for help. As you can see here, she says it was a game.
He thought it would be funny to be put in the suitcase, so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to joke with you, and I'll zip you up and make him, squirm a little bit, whatever it is.
Judge Michael Kranick ordered a pre-sentencing investigation ahead of Boone's sentencing set for December 2nd, 2024 at 1:30 p.m. She faces up to life in prison. This case outcome has led to many conversations about how the legal system addresses the complex intersection of domestic violence, trauma, and criminal intent. And it may influence how future cases involving similar defenses are approached.